My name is Faith,
My name is AJ.
and today we're going to be talking about the book of Job. So let's talk about Job and who he is, AJ.
Let's talk about him.
Okay. So Job was a righteous man who, it says in the Bible that he was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. He
Mm,
was someone that basically had like the perfect life. He had a family, he had a farm, like all of his life was prosperous. He just received like blessing on top of blessing on top of blessing.
he was the guy.
He was great. Um, but it only talks about him for like a paragraph, and then we get into like when he got tested.
Right.
So basically, there's like this council that God has,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially, like one day, God was in the council, and he just presented Job and said, like, look at this, like he's such a righteous man, like he's one of my best followers.
Right.
And the Satan basically comes up and challenges him and says, he's only this righteous man because you continue to bless him.
Right.
And if you take all of that away, he's going to curse your name.
Right.
And God essentially he allows the Satan to take away everything from Job's life, his family, his wealth, his health. He wasn't supposed to take out first, but then he took it.
Right.
And he just allows the Satan to take everything from him because God knows that Job is not going to curse his name.
Right.
He's basically trying to prove a point to the Satan. Like, no, like, he's going to still follow me and want me,
Right.
even though he's going to be suffering.
And even before, well, when he did that, what you were saying, I think I would consider it the first trial of Job's testing was physical stuff, like losing everything, like you said. But the second trial, that's when no, the first trial was losing the physical stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then God told Satan sometime, basically saying you could do everything you want, but you can't touch his heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second trial was him getting the illnesses and
Mm-hmm.
everything like that. And that's when he went but wild.
Mm-hmm. So the first basically two chapters speak about what happens when Job lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he lost his wife because his wife even said,
For sure, God.
yeah, curse your God. And he basically, like, he kind of like rebuked her, honestly. He was
Mm-hmm.
like, no. And that's how he lost his wife.
Right.
His children died.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So the wife was not killed, but
yeah, she left.
right.
Yeah. So basically, it wasn't like it wasn't like the Satan killed everything from his world, you know what I mean? But some people like chose to leave him, which sometimes is greater pain than
Mm-hmm.
having somebody die.
Mm-hmm.
Because having somebody alive choose to leave you
Mm-hmm.
is like mourning someone who's still alive.
Right.
So I think that even that pain was probably something that he struggled with a lot.
Right.
On top of having the like boils on his
Mm-hmm.
skin, and
Mm-hmm.
like in the book it talks about how he would scratch them with like
Mm-hmm.
broken ceramics.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that. So his skin was probably like raw, and he was homeless. He didn't have anywhere to go.
Imagine coming from having everything and then losing everything.
Hmm. Yeah.
And talking about what you were saying with the wife, um, kind of that's I'm not trying to like side going off topic, but it's
Hmm.
kind of like God and man. Like when God comes, He's going to come to get His people. But the biggest suffering with like the biggest trial that would happen is not like the things that are going to happen to this world, but
Hmm.
the biggest trial is not having God anymore. The
Hmm.
separation of God and man. There's no longer going to be a relationship when He comes.
Mhm.
get his people, and I kind of relate it to the wife in Job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was good. Um, basically, when we move past like the first and second chapter after he loses everything, these friends come along, these three friends. And I'm going to talk about the books of wisdom for like 2 seconds. So there's three books of wisdom. There's
Mm-hmm.
Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. So Proverbs, basically, not the lesson, but the gist of the story there is that you're gonna get what you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Righteous get good, the evil get bad. That's the story in Proverbs. Ecclesiastes basically like questioned that, and it says like, you could be evil and still get good. You
Mm-hmm.
could be righteous and still get bad. So the question in the book of Job, well, the question that Job really had was, is God
Yes.
just?
Mm-hmm.
Is he fair? And that was basically the thing that he was questioning the whole entire 37 chapters of him questioning God,
Right.
first of all. And so when the friends came, they were like, no, like, my God is just. So you did
Mm-hmm.
something wrong.
Right.
Like, you deserve this because you did something wrong.
Right.
And honestly, they just argue back and forth. The friends list something like, oh, you must have did this. And he's like, no, but I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And they just keep going back and forth. It's a lot to read,
Mm-hmm.
but like a lot of them were super interesting to read, especially the way that he would like back himself up,
Yeah.
and he would say like, no, like, I know I didn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
But what was crazy though,
He went him.
he did.
He, as soon as the friends decided to say, "Hey, buddy, you did something,"
Mhm.
he did not. He pulled out his guns and responded strong. Like each response was not like, "Yeah, I think I did do something wrong."
Mhm.
No, it was a response of, "Bro, I didn't do anything."
Mhm.
And it's crazy because if he was not in that position, he would be just like one of his friends as well. But he knew he didn't do anything.
Mhm.
So him responding with not because he was responding in a place of I know I didn't do anything, so stop blaming me,
Mhm.
you know? But one of his I was reading something that even if he wasn't in that position, if it was reversed, he would be exactly doing the same thing. It was like a custom of them back then that if you see something happening, it's usually because of that. Um, yeah, that was my rant.
But at the same time though, remember from the podcast how he said like the friends the whole time were just talking about God. They were
Right.
never talking to God. But the whole 37 chapters of the friends questioning him, Job was still talking to God
Mm,
the entire time.
right.
So Job he was standing on business because he knew, like,
Mhm.
me and God, no, like, that's not what's going on.
Right.
But the friends are just talking about him,
Mm,
thinking like basically they're coming at it from a place as if they were God.
right.
And Job never did that.
You know what's crazy? That see, this is where it connects because Job, you were saying that his friends were talking about God.
Mhm.
In the beginning, Job was also talking about God as well,
Mhm.
instead of to God.
Mhm.
In the beginning, that's where he says, um, in verse 20, chapter 1. I'm not going to read it from the 20, but it says, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, the Lord has taken away.
Mhm.
My name, may the name of the Lord be praised."
Mhm.
Talking about God. So
But
in the
not talking
beginning,
to him.
exactly.
Mhm.
So that's where all the sacrifices and basically everything that he was doing was to how would I say it? To please God because he thought that if he was doing good,
He'd receive good.
he will receive good.
Mhm.
So that's where the where does he start? Uh, I think around chapter 3 or 4.
What when he starts?
I think is after one of his friends r- said something, and
Is it
then
before? Are you talking about when he cursed his life?
after he curses his life,
After? Yeah.
because his friend speaks. One of his friends starts saying something, and then that's when he started speaking to God.
Mhm.
That's where he went ham, and it was like, no, enough is enough.
But at the same time, before he lost everything, even when it came to his kids,
Hmm.
he, like what we were talking about Bible study with Eli and his sons, he was sacrificing for his kids, but his kids weren't making a change. Like
Hmm.
he was allowing his kids to just do whatever.
Hmm.
And he thought that him, giving an extra sacrifice was going to be, you know, like a, I don't know, like a equal,
I know what you're saying.
yeah, like,
I hope you guys know what we're saying.
yeah, hopefully you get what I'm saying. But,
Like a balance of
hmm yeah, like basically balance,
balance.
balancing it all out.
Hmm.
hmm Um, but yeah, so as we go further into the book, you have the whole 37 chapters of,
But before we go into the 37 chapters,
mm-hmm,
there's like the book of Job speaks about Job a lot.
mm-hmm,
And well, it's the book
it's
of
the
Job.
book of Job.
However, the the book of Job, I see it like in two perspectives. Him and his kids. Because the kids, I feel
Why don't
like
you talk about that, AJ?
let's
Talk
talk
about
about it.
that, AJ.
Okay, okay, okay. It's a little bit complicated because this these couple, well, ever since we started this podcast,
mm-hmm.
it was a little bit annoying.
Hmm.
Not the podcast, doing the study of
Yeah,
Job.
Job.
And in the beginning, everything was nice, but when we started actually studying, that's when it started getting difficult
Mm-hmm.
because I was trying to relate to him, but I was not relating to him,
Mm.
and it was getting me frustrated because how can I relate to someone? I mean, how can I do a study if I don't understand him?
Or you can't relate.
And I can't relate to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I did the study. I kept going, and then I heard this thing saying about Job was showing his actions but never his motives. So that was one of the things that killed me
Mm-hmm.
because although I was born and raised into this,
Mm-hmm.
being a Christian, knowing God, I already knew him.
Mm-hmm.
However, everything was all actions.
Mm-hmm.
Going to church was an action. Praying was an action. Everything was everything was like I felt like it was robotic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I started relating to him with him the most
Mm-hmm.
because it was no longer what's I called and it was it was just
It wasn't robotic anymore.
it wasn't robotic anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that when I got married. When I got married, that's when everything started breaking into pieces because now I feel like I don't know God anymore, but I'm starting to know God more,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense,
But in a different way.
in a different way,
Just like Job.
just like Job.
How he knew God in the beginning, but towards the end, he knew God in a whole different light.
Exactly. Because Job Job knew Job knew who was God.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, how did he say it? Oh yeah,
He knew of God.
he knew of God,
Mm-hmm.
but he never experienced him.
Mm-hmm.
Um so yeah, I think relating to him was actions and motives was very important
Mm-hmm.
because us as humans, we think that doing all these things, going to church, um, praying, reading,
Mhm.
if you're not adding the Holy Spirit, if you're not adding Jesus,
Mhm.
God together, it just doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
Because then you're just going to church to please man, but not to please God.
Mhm.
Um,
But that was honestly us the whole study though. Like
yes.
the whole study we were struggling like to piece things together because we really weren't looking at it as like a whole. And I
Mhm.
feel like us right now, like we're not at the end of the journey that Job had yet. You
Right.
know, like
Or
we're still in like the 37 chapters of arguing with each
literally.
other.
Yes.
So I think that
Yeah.
we struggle to fully understand it because we're in that season of God questioning, I mean, of Job questioning God.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? He says some things that he probably shouldn't have said, but it's so interesting that, and everything in the Bible is so intentional because there's a man, Job, questioning God,
Mhm.
asking if he's righteous, like
Right.
all these things that you should not be saying.
Mhm.
And yet it's in the Bible.
Mhm.
And they leave it in there for a specific reason
Mhm.
because everybody goes through it. You
Mhm.
know, when we go through our seasons of something happens and we feel so disconnected and far. And so we talk to God and we're questioning him.
Mhm.
But what people don't realize is this is what God wants us to do.
Mhm.
He doesn't want us to just say, okay, you did that, I'm walking away from you.
Right.
Job did the right thing, even though he said some crazy things to God.
Mhm.
He was doing the right thing because he was going to God.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the thing that we have to remember because it's so easy for everybody in this world to say, you know, there's so much bad, like, why is God such a good God?
Mhm.
And people just stray away from God because they had a situation happen to them.
Mhm.
You don't know how many times I've talked to people and they're like, yeah, like, me and God are like on a quits right now because this happened.
Right.
And then they just stop talking to him.
Right.
But you see people like Job,
Mhm.
he never quit.
Right. He
Even
kept
though he
going.
was questioning him, even though he was basically cursing his name,
Mhm.
at the end, he came out righteous
Mhm.
because he still ran to God.
Right.
And I think that's something that the book honestly taught me was that even though like when you're going through something hard, you have to continue to run to
Continue.
God.
Yeah.
And it might take 37 chapters, but you're going to get to the end
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you. I think is having I think the word is endurance,
Endurance.
right?
Mhm.
Is to continue no matter what.
Mhm.
Because a lot of these people, well, not a lot of these people, take it back. A lot of us, I include myself, because I'm still, like you said, we're still
We're
stuck
still
in
there.
that 37 chapters.
Yeah.
But is understanding that we're just hearing of God, because that's what Job was. That's all he knew. He was hearing of God. But that's why we see in the last chapter that I have heard of you, but now I see you.
Mhm.
That's where God go. That was before he said that. God was, oh, now we could go into
Go
it.
to 40.
Let's go
Yeah.
to let's go. This is where God goes ham on him
Mhm.
because
Wait,
he.
but tell the people what happened before that. After the 37 chapters, Job basically says like, I'm done. God, you get here right now.
Oh
You come
yes,
here right now and
yes,
you tell me what's going on.
right,
And God did show up in a storm cloud.
yes.
Go ahead and tell him. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, okay, okay. So right, that's when Job went ham and stuff like that. But little did he know that when he said that, it says, let me start from is chapter 40, verse 1 going down. It says, the Lord said to Job, will the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? And correct my words because I might sound robotic. Let him Let him who accused God answer him. Then Job answered to the Lord, I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hands over my mouth, which you're not, because you're still speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke once, but I have no answer. You spoke plenty of times. No answer. Twice, but I will say no more. This is where he goes ham. It says, then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. Wow. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. When I read that, I
And
was
he
like,
says that multiple times too.
yes, he does not say that
Once.
once, because he says he says that, then I think, wait, I
He
might
says
be
it
wrong.
in 42. I know that for sure. But it's a question that he continues to ask Job. And
Right.
my book is a different version. Mine's ESV. And I like that in mine it says, this is when the Lord is speaking to Job.
Yes.
He says, I will question you and you will make it known to me. Will you even put me in the wrong? Will you condemn me that you may be in the right? Have you an arm like God and can you thunder with a voice like his? He said, boy, you
Can
don't
you
know who you're talking to
read
right now.
read read chapter 6 in 40?
Chapter 6.
Mm-hmm. I mean, verse 6.
Yours is different. Let me see.
Let's switch.
Verse 6 is then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm.
Mm-hmm. There says, then the Lord answered Job out of the world. Yeah, you can read that. I don't know how to say that.
We're still working on your reading
Yep.
level.
I'm nervous, that's why.
I know what you're trying to say though. I know that you're saying like
What am I
the
trying to say?
Lord, so basically this is what happened.
Mm,
The Lord came in a storm.
mm,
He said, boy, you don't know
mm.
who you're talking to right now.
But where?
Right here in chapter 40.
No, but where?
What do you mean where?
Go back. Say what you were just saying, but go back.
The Lord was speaking to Job in a storm
Mm,
and he said, you don't know who you're talking to.
right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Now
Mm-hmm.
continue.
And basically, he basically shows the world to Job.
Mm,
He shows him the universe. He shows him the cosmos.
mm-hmm.
And he tells him like, do you think you can handle like moving all this around and controlling all this? Do you think that you could even you don't even you see the sun rise every day and you see the sun fall. Do you even know that how that happens?
Mm,
Like he's saying to him, I control so much. I have such an intimate relationship with the universe, with the people on this earth, with the animals, with the air, with the sun, with the stars, with the grass. He has such an intimate relationship that we will never understand.
right.
We see these things every day, but we will never understand like on the level that God has.
Exactly.
So he's saying to him like, look at look at what I created.
Mm,
You could never do this.
never.
Like, so for you to question me,
Mm-hmm.
you have no idea what's going on up here, like what
Exactly.
I'm doing. And that's what Job that's when Job basically is like, oh shoot.
Oh shoot,
Like
what did I get
he
myself
starts to
into?
like he's like, oh my he's like, I should have never said those things. Oh, he's like, oh no, like
Well, I
he's
take
like
it back.
I rebuke myself in the name of Jesus. Literally. That's literally what he's basically saying, like, oh no, like I
That's why.
messed up.
That's why he said, I put my hand on my mouth.
Yep.
But that's exactly where I wanted to go to,
Mm-hmm.
because he said, it says, um, Or I lost myself. Yes, it says, then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. So it's crazy because he presents himself
in a storm.
in a storm, and then he
And
goes ham.
we always want to say that the things that we go through are a storm.
Right. Exactly. So him presenting himself in the storm as a storm. What? How can we connect this to like something good? Because God is coming as a reflection of your storm,
Mm-hmm.
but He comes out.
Mm-hmm.
How does He come out?
He speaks. What do you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. He's essentially pulling Job out of his own storm. That's what he's doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he's like, I don't know. The way that honestly, to everybody listening, you have to read the end of Job. If you don't read any other story in like any other chapter in Job, you have to read the end.
Yes.
Because the way that God like literally goes after him
Mm-hmm.
and basically answers the whole entire question of is God just or unjust?
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't like specifically say like I'm just. He's saying I made this universe. I have an intimate relationship with this universe.
Right.
I understand it on a deep level, a
Mm-hmm.
level that you can never understand.
Right.
And imagine you were God.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a world right now that is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things going on.
Right.
And people always say, like, if we have a God, then why are these people suffering?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this happening? Why is this whole country being attacked?
Mm-hmm.
And like, you have to understand that when God is looking at us,
Mm-hmm.
he sees everything that's wrong.
Yeah.
He knows what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like he can address every single thing that's going on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
He's powerful. He can do whatever he wants. But we know at the end of the day,
Right.
he's going to work it out.
Right.
And things happen for a reason.
And the reason why like you were saying, he does not, he could do everything. He could fix any problem. He could do
Like
anything he
this.
wants. Like literally like that. However, if he does fix every problem, it will defeat the purpose of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he fixed everything, it doesn't help you grow.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help us grow. It doesn't help the country
We
grow.
have no trust in the Lord.
Exactly. Because right now, everything that's going on, God is presenting himself as a storm, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't realize that it's God.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he is still in a storm,
Mm-hmm.
because we have not acknowledged him. We have not acknowledged that the storm is not from the devil, but it's from God,
Mm-hmm.
trying to help us understand
Mm-hmm.
that it's him
Mm-hmm.
and he's in the storm. You just have to call him out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Job lacked.
Mm-hmm.
That's where his kids lacked.
Mm-hmm.
That's where his wife lacked.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's why she says, go curse your God, because
Mm-hmm.
she had another God behind her.
Mm-hmm.
Let me stop.
That's crazy too.
It is
And it's
crazy.
crazy because this was not because Job was doing something wrong.
Exactly.
This was not a punishment.
Mm-hmm.
This was a test,
Yes.
essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the end, when God gave him back everything tenfold,
Mm-hmm.
gave him back all these kids,
Mm-hmm.
all this money, all this stuff, it was not because he passed a test.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
because when God was looking at the universe in a whole
Mm.
and he looked at Job,
Yeah.
he said, you know what? I think you deserve a blessing.
Yes.
And he said, boom,
Mm-hmm.
everything back tenfold.
Right.
So
It was not what how did you say it? It was not a gift.
no, not a reward.
It was not an award, it
It
was
was
a
a
gift.
gift that God decided to give him.
Exactly.
And that's the crazy thing too, is like we think like, you know what, I'm gonna keep going to church,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have like the best relationship with God, but I'm gonna keep going to church and I'm gonna keep praying and I'm gonna keep spreading the word on Instagram and Snapchat and all this stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And they think like oh yeah, like
I'm
I'm gonna
doing it.
get blessed,
Right.
I'm gonna get rewarded,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where some people, like, they fall off.
Right.
But
Because it's no longer is their actions.
mm-hmm,
Their motives are not there
mm-hmm,
anymore.
mm-hmm,
Their actions is showing I'm going to post this so I could get more
yep,
attention
yep,
rather than I'm going to post this for the glory of God.
yep,
It's no longer them. It's no longer God, it's them.
it's them. Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
yep. And then you see at the end of Job where even though he was gifted these things, he's like, you know what, whatever happens next, I'm not questioning God at all.
Mhm.
He's not questioning not one bit.
Mhm.
And now he has this strong trust in the Lord, knowing that whatever happens, I know that God did it for
Mhm.
a specific reason.
Mhm.
And I think that's just like beautiful because Job honestly went through something I've I'll never
Well,
experience.
I
I
would
don't
be
think.
traumatized.
Yeah, and he ended
I'll have
up
to
with
go to
this
therapy a
strong.
whole bunch of
I
days.
think that's honestly the biggest thing that he received.
Hmm.
Like, not the kids, not the wealth, none of that. It was the fact that he was able to be content with just having God.
Oh.
And like the podcast, like the podcast said
Yeah.
this morning when remember I was telling you,
Mhm.
when we die,
Uh-huh.
we're not on this planet. Like, we're not on this earth anymore. We're alone. We're with
Mhm.
God.
Yeah, say it. Say it, Faith. Say it.
We're with God. So essentially, like, we have to be comfortable with just being with God. Because if we get to heaven, it's not going to be like what we expect it to be. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, we're thinking, like, oh, I'm going to go to heaven and there's going to be rainbows and unicorns and I'm going
They
to be
gonna
able to
think
eat
Bad
cotton
Bunny is gonna
candy.
be up there.
No.
They gonna think that Drake is gonna be up there.
And, but no, like, in how the guy explained it,
Mhm.
like, the really, like, biblical, like,
Mhm.
educational way. When we're up there, we have to be content with just being with God
Mhm.
and being in His presence. So the fact that now Job is just content with being with God, like, I
Mhm.
think that's what we should all strive for as
Right.
Christians and as
Exactly.
people.
Yeah.
Because even if, like, people don't believe in the afterlife,
Right.
at some point we're going to be somewhere doing something.
Right.
But are you going to be content?
Mhm.
Is the question.
Right. I I think we're us as humans we're content of just hearing about God. We're not content seeing Him
Mm-hmm.
because it's a oh come on background crew. I'm trying to focus. I where that's where again that verse is very powerful
Mm-hmm.
because he I think that God goes ham on him, but also Job does not go ham on God, but he goes ham on himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because that verse is very small but very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're us humans, we're just okay about listening to him, and that's where the actions come in. The actions is always is it's that's where it stems from. Did he just fart?
No, my stomach is growling.
Stop lying.
I swear. I swear.
That young went. "Ooh." But we're okay with just hearing about him,
Yeah.
and that's where
We need to know him truly.
yes, exactly.
And you know what, AJ? We're going to work on that.
Yeah, we are because
And I think that that's like, I feel like some people, when you become a Christian and people know you, like, oh, like, you're this Christian now,
hmm
people think, like, we just got it. And,
hmm
like, oh, like, we're filled with the Holy Spirit and
hmm
we know God. But it is not easy. And
no.
I feel like even sometimes you have to start all the way over.
hmm
Like, you just have to start from page zero
Yeah.
because you can feel so connected with God, but then when you're truly alone and you're not content with just God's presence, like,
hmm
that's how you know, like,
Right.
yeah, you got to go back.
But yet again, that's where the journey starts though. Because
Just like Job.
we see we we hear of God and it's frustrating because in the beginning it's so powerful. In the beginning, you see all these blessings, you see you see that you have a beautiful life, etc. Like you're on fire on God. But when you start realizing that this life is hard without God and that life is hard with
With
God,
God. Put
that's
that
where it
on a
gets
shirt.
that's
Put that
where
on a shirt and a
that's
mug.
where it gets difficult because a lot of us think that serving God, everything is going to be roses,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not. And it sucks
Mm-hmm.
because I I've seen a lot of people come to God and leave God
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't what they expected.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks because God is what everything you want. Because unfortunately, when we all die, we all going to see him. It's not like we could avoid him. It's not, oh, um I'm going to believe in this God. I'm going to believe in this guy. No, there's only one God. Like there's only one. And it's just sad because how how to bring it back? It is it sucks because a lot of people instead of going through the 37 chapters,
Mm-hmm.
they quit.
Mm-hmm.
And they quit because they never had a true relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
With Job, I think one of the reasons why he didn't quit is because although his actions was the only thing that he could lean on, he leaned on it because he trusted him.
Mm-hmm.
He leaned on it because there was uh, a connection built up, you know? But
I think that's we all have to be like Job.
mm-hmm.
We all gotta like continue to strive towards bettering our relationship with God.
Yeah.
And even if we do come at him crazy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, at least you're still going to him. You're
Mm-hmm.
not running to the other worldly things that used to satisfy you anymore. You're
Right.
going to God because he's the only way. He's the only person who's going to give you
Mm-hmm.
the answer that you need.
Right.
And it may not be in the storm cloud, but it's different for us now.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have to like stick with it. Keep going.
Right.
Mhm.
And one thing that I want to point out of Job too is that the endurance part of it.
Mhm.
I think I
We all
think
need that spiritually.
exactly.
It's a
I
spiritual endurance.
exactly. I think it's important for us to understand that being a believer or not being a believer, I think quitting is not an option.
Mm.
I think that's a lot of us in this generation especially. We quit. We quit on everything. We
Mhm.
quit on life.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that Job could have done. He
Mhm.
could have just
He could have bed rotted.
he could have bed rotted with all those blisters on him, on his toes and
Mhm.
everything.
Mhm.
Like he could have stood there. There's a lot of us quit on a relationship with your girlfriend or your parents or anything.
I think a lot of people get like lost in the 37 chapters too.
Yeah,
Like the world as a Christian, the world is going to question you 24/7.
exactly.
And some people really like fall victim to that
Mhm.
because they they won't keep fighting for themselves. They won't say like, "Oh no, I didn't do
Mhm.
that." But
Mhm.
they'll start to believe like did I do that?
Mhm.
And then they'll just get lost and be like, "Well,
Right.
I guess I did that. So
Right.
I don't deserve him."
Right. Exactly. And that's where that's instead of saying because this world would say, you know, curse your God.
Mm,
Your this world will say to you, God, why are you serving this God? He's not benefiting you. Why are you doing this?
mhm.
Why are you going to do this? Why are you not hanging out with me
Or some
anymore?
people even say like, "Oh, like I can't get close to God because I've done this, this, and that,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I need to work on myself before I start my relationship with God."
Because that's where that exactly,
No.
and that's where they get filled up with their friends,
Mhm.
those three amigos.
Mhm.
They start believing in them.
Mhm.
they started believing more in them rather than God,
Mm-hmm.
or rather than their their true truths. That the true truth is that they're doing the right thing in serving in God. Rather, they just fall into what their friends want to believe.
At the end of the day, we just gotta be like Job.
Yeah,
Keep pushing.
keep pushing,
Mm-hmm.
having good endurance,
Mm-hmm.
and remembering that there's a light in the tunnel.
One day when God is looking at this universe as a whole, to anybody that's like going through something difficult, one day when God is looking at this universe, He's gonna look at you
Mm,
and He's gonna decide to gift you.
mm.
It's just
Not reward you,
not reward you, gift you.
gift you.
And He knows how to implement everything at the perfect timing and in the perfect way.
Right,
You just have to be patient.
right,
Things
right.
happen. He's going to take things away from you.
Mm-hmm,
You're going to be upset.
mm-hmm.
And everything happens for a reason.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Everything does happen for a reason. We have 3 minutes, you said? They're kicking us off.
I think we're pretty much wrapped up.
You think
I
I got
think
a
we
lot
said
more
what
to
we
say
said.
though?
You do?
No, I don't. I'm
Oh,
kidding. Those are all my words. I'm done for the week.
yeah, I think that's honestly the lesson that everybody needs to take is just to continue
Hmm.
to have that spiritual
Yeah.
endurance
I,
and to understand that we are never going to understand the world like God does. We're never going to
hmm.
understand why He does what He does. And He's never going to tell us because He didn't even tell Job.
Right.
And Job demanded Him to come, and He
Right.
still didn't tell him.
Right.
But this world is beautiful,
Hmm.
but it's also wild. It's also crazy. And
Hmm.
God created it that way for a specific reason.
Right.
Because if we didn't have the wild and the crazy, we wouldn't have any good.
Hmm.
Good wouldn't matter.
I agree. I I think the one thing that I've learned about Job, like Job, can you stop rushing me?
Keep that in
These
there. Keep that in the audio.
these 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 and I'm gonna wrap it up. I was just joking. Um, it's my wife that she's rushing. Um, I think the two perspectives is very important because Job was someone that had endurance,
Mm-hmm.
but the kids never had endurance.
Mm-hmm.
So because this book was also written um not for people that was out of this that not for people that are not Christians,
Mm-hmm.
but for people that are Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I would say to my fellow Christians is to not be fake.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're fake in the eye of God, and that's why I connected with the kids as well so much, is because I realized that I was being so fake that my actions were not meeting my motives. That I was doing a lot of actions in public to please people, but in private,
Mm-hmm.
so everything that I was doing in public was not matching what was in private.
Mm-hmm.
And God will catch you. Trust and believe.
Mm-hmm.
My fellow Christians that are listening, God ain't stupid. My fellow Christians, if you are doing things out of pocket, and if you think God is going to reward you, or
Mm-mm.
things may seem like a reward but never be a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
So, my fellow Christians, and I say this with all my heart,
As a co-pastor.
as, no, as just someone that went through it because it
Is going
sucks.
through it.
And going through it, yes, and going through it. Now I have my wife, thank God. Now the temptation is not as strong. But for my fellow Christians, don't be stupid. Don't act like that you could preach good. Don't act dumb because behind doors,
He
hmm,
sees.
he sees too. Just because you close the door doesn't mean he does not see you. And then that's where the book comes in because we're okay with just hearing about God, but we never want to really
Hear
see
him.
him.
Hear him. We hear of him, we don't hear him.
Exactly.
Or just even feel him or his
Mm,
guidance.
exactly.
And that's, you know what?
Man, we just started this podcast. Come on. We're okay with listening to people, but never
Mm-hmm.
God.
Mm.
Come on. We really gotta wrap it up. Well, guys, again, this is AJ and Faith, and I hope that
You learn
this
something.
you learned something. We're as broken as you guys.
Yeah.
I'm a leader of the church, but I'm broken as hell. And I want you
Oh,
guys to know that I what happened? We have to wrap it up, Faith. And you here laughing. So again, take I wish we had more time to warm up because me and
they'll
Faith are
cut that
very
out.
me and Faith are very well, at least for me, I'm very awkward and very I don't know how to speak a lot.
AJ, wrap it up.
Well, again, this is HA and Faith, and I hope that you enjoyed this podcast of ours of Job, and we're done.